We bring to you Dallas Cowboys owner and general manager. It is Jerry Jones. Good morning, sir.
Hey, man. Good morning.
Now, I know we got a lot to talk about with this team, but we've gone through this a few years in a row now. Darren Woodson is once again a semifinalist for the Hall of Fame. He'll probably become a finalist. It feels criminal that Darren Woodson is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, does it not?
Well, from our perspective, it does. I know what he meant to the teams that he played on for the Cowboys. I know what his contributions were, and I know how the opposing teams respected him. And he, to me, is what a Hall of Famer is. And his story is wonderful. He has been exemplary, and it'd be great for the Hall of Fame to have him in it.
Do you have any idea, like, you've been around this a long time, do you have any idea what might be keeping him out, like, besides the voting? I get that, but, like, why he might not get the votes?
Well, I don't know. I've heard different positions have emphasis, and I've heard that about tight ends. I've heard it about safeties, if you will. But that is only when you're looking why it's been that long. But let me say this. Just think about this a minute. It doesn't matter when you go in. It matters to you individually, I'm sure, and your family. But once you're in, that's Hall of Fame. And it didn't make any difference what boat you got in on or what year you got in on. You get to enjoy it longer if you are in the Hall of Fame and got a lot more years to live. But fundamentally, he is a Hall of Famer in our minds, my mind. And when he goes in, he will have his rightful place there.
And one more about Darren, Jerry, like just our interactions with him, he's just a class act. He's as good as it gets. And then on the other front, though, if you take him all the way back, when you remember drafting him, when y'all remember getting him originally, did you know exactly what he was, or were you like, man, this guy could change the position for us?
Well, the conversion, he was big and played linebacker too to some at times in his college career. But we knew he could run. That was a real criteria for him. But you couldn't have known the quality of the person and the character. And it's always referred to when you speak of Darren Woodson. We're so excited that this time of year is when we recognize and kick off the Red Kettle campaign. Mm-hmm. Darren is a poster child as far as what Salvation Army and what the Red Kettle means. And at his home there in the Arizona area, Phoenix area, he literally, his mom depended on the Salvation Army for him to have his school closed and really have many of the things that Darren was around and molded him. So you're talking about a great story of a mom and of a family that just did it, evolved into having a Darren Woodson, and it shows you, not only it can have people like Darren Woodson benefit, but it shows you just exactly what the Salvation Army is all about.
Jerry Jones joined us here on the KNC Masterpiece on 105.3 The Fan. We saw you on the Netflix right before the fight, and I know that Michael Irvin was sitting right next to you, and he's had some things to say about Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders, and I was wondering if you would like to address that.
Well, I would say how much I'm in the camp for the success of Deion and what he is. How he has become the coach that he is today. It's not surprising. He's as great an athlete and a real great one. He's just as much a person and just as much got the kind of energy. And he just would jump out at you as someone that young men would be inspired by and be led by. And, of course, he's got an outstanding boy there and is going to go extremely high in the draft. There's no question about that. But I think we're way ahead of ourselves relative to when and if he decides to go into coaching in the NFL. And one of his greatest skills that he really brings to college is that he is almost has no peer as far as being a recruiter. And I mean, kids want to come play for him, and they want to, and he has a way of selling that. And that is one skill, that recruiting skill, that is not a huge prerequisite for NFL coaches. And so one of his greatest values is in that area of putting the team together and in the sense of getting great talent to come and play for him there at Colorado. So all of that would go into your mind, but make no mistake about it, he's one of the top people, young and old, that I've been around in the NFL.
Now, when Cowboys speak, whether it's former Cowboys like Michael Irvin, current Cowboys like Micah Parsons, it makes news. He said, I know the scores don't show it, but I'm going to put this out there. We're a damn good football team. What do you think about that?
Well, I like that. And the facts are that he's right. Now, the issue there is that there's 31 other damn good football teams that, for whatever the reasons, they all may not have it together and they all may not be winning the games against other good football teams. But Michael's right, and as a point of emphasis this morning, we have got so much more left in our season, and those games are so important to us. Each one of them are. And it's important that everything we can do to win the individual games. Well, one of the things you do is you recognize that you're a bad play away, you're a mistake away, many times as an individual player, from making the plays or being involved in a situation that can win the game. Now, that's very critical to us, and that's very critical to us that we give ourselves every chance to go up here this weekend and beat that Washington team. And I look at the rest of the schedule that way. So I think Micah is just an expression of, hey, we don't look at it like season, or we don't look at it like playoff. We're looking at it quarter to quarter. And to me, that's what you have to do. Football really, at the end of the day, is so much about the next play. It's so much about doing your job on a given play. It's really in the dirt, as Jason Witten said.
So, Jerry, another former player of yours, Marcus Spears, who's awesome, on ESPN, said, I have zero vendetta against Jerry Jones, and then he went on to kind of just be critical of the organization. How does it feel when a former Dallas Cowboy is talking about the way the Cowboys are run versus, somebody like me who obviously was never part of the Cowboys organization?
Well, I think a lot of Marcus Spears, we drafted him. We had a big fight over whether to draft him ahead of DeMarcus Ware, but on that draft day. But we got both him and DeMarcus Ware on the same in the same round on the same day. And so I'm a big, big fan of him. And, one of the things that is so important about NFL and important for my interest in football is that it engenders different perspectives, different opinions. And all of my time in the NFL, I have had a lot of critics, and I've had a lot of different opinions, and I welcome those. A lot of people don't realize that when I make a decision out there about a coach or personnel, don't think that I'm in some kind of just a room and I'm sequestered off. I have huge input in terms of opinions and in terms of their evaluation of it, and I have it from many, many sources. So I put him right in line. I know I'm not going to say because I want him to be balanced, but there's no angst here with Marcus Spears at all. And so, but I don't. Again, you can imagine you just don't have time to listen to what everyone's got to say, especially in those settings.
This might fit into the category of you don't have time to listen to what this person has to say, but I know you've had some fun and sparred with Stephen A.
I didn't say that. I didn't say this person has to say. I'm just saying that you cannot drive your car based on sitting there listening to all of the commentary.
Very fair. I was curious if you've had some fun sparring back and forth over the years with Stephen A. Smith, what you thought. He just made the comparison between you and President Biden in terms of he wishes someone would step in and get you out of the public spotlight. Does that feel too far, or is that just another thing people say?
Well, as you know, Stephen A. is a fraud in a positive sense. I'm smiling. We are friends. And I am having huge support and huge input and help from everyone he mentioned in that call about stepping in. But I would say if he had asked me that question relative to the issue or the criticism that Biden had about his ability to function, I wish he'd follow me around every day. And he would see that I'm the busiest I've ever been in my life. And I'm not concerned about the ability to do the work, do the job. I just made a quick 14-hour trip back and forth to New York here yesterday. And so my point for a league meeting, but my point is that Stephen A., and I'd love to have him just sit beside us for a day and make the rounds and have him listen to me, field the calls, and do the kinds of things we do. And he wouldn't be worried about me there. But I do appreciate his concern. And by the way, it is genuine.
Absolutely it is. Now, Jerry, what is your impression of what Dan Quinn has done with Washington?
Well, I've always had such a high opinion of the things that he accomplished when he was coach at Atlanta. And he was within fractions of winning a Super Bowl there. And I know that the people that had worked around Dan every phase, not only with his colleagues, but with his superior, or you might say, there in Atlanta, as well as media input. And I've never had such glowing reports about what kind of person he is and just how good they felt that he was to be around for football. So I have an opinion of Dan Quinn, and it's formidable that he's sitting up there in Washington. I wanted him to get another great opportunity, but boy, I hated it. We were going to have to play him twice a year. So I think a lot of Dan, and obviously he's the perfect example of when you get something and you have an interest in it, you're usually giving up something someplace else. And I'm talking about relative to football, strategy, the entire gambit. And Dan really emphasizes that the speed aspect of it. He, as we well know, the best way to identify him is how he uses safety types at linebacker. And I really like that. And on the other hand, you got to sacrifice a little lead in your butt. Mm-hmm. And so you don't, the guys can't move around and have that size. And it's quite a compromise. He's the best. He's been very innovative in getting that done and getting that physicalness that you need and getting those guys to be able to make those stops, and particularly in the run game.
Are you surprised that Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury have been able to have this quick of success in his rookie season together?
Well, Cliff is he's one of those guys that if you don't play him regularly, he's a tough draw because he's going to come out of there with some stuff that you might not. It's a little unconventional. Now, by the way, at the end of the day, he'll say, well, I'll show you unconventional, and if you're susceptible to it, he'll run that ball right down your throat and continue just to run it down your throat. I think a lot of him, he's a friend. I think he's done an outstanding job every place he's been. And I really think a lot of him, and I think that he was ideal in working with the young quarterback. And I say that because of all the great quarterbacks that he's coached. Go back, Mahomes, you name them. And that was a very, very good move for Dan to get Cliff for his coordinator, offense.
Talking with Jerry Jones right here on 105.3 The Fan. I know it's been a really difficult year in terms of injuries, but maybe some positive news yesterday. DaRon Bland out there as a full participant. Do you believe we will finally see the season debut of DaRon Bland against the Commanders?
Yes, I do, unless something pops its head up in the next couple of days. But, yes, I do. And like I say, I'm compelled to say this. Now, you've got to be able to deal with injuries to have success in the NFL. And a lot of teams have more than their fair. What is fair? It's really not a word here. It's just above your share, let's put it like that. But you got to have depth. That's the challenge, and to make up for that injury. This year, I think by having as many young players as we've got, for our depth, I think in places we've had basically more shortcomings than I would have anticipated. But still, that's not an excuse. That's just what's happening. But I seem to have gotten a little criticism by we can do better and we will do better by making that statement about the team. But it's a fact. The more reps you get of young players, the better they get. In our particular case, they'll know what to do more. They'll know what to do more instinctively, and the better they get. And what is critical that I want the fans to know is that every series, every quarter, every game we play is critical for the future because we want to use the games to not only win the game, but we also want to use it to develop and establish the way a lot of these young guys need to play for the rest of their careers.
I know you said with some of the young guys, maybe it hasn't totally gone as anticipated just quite yet, but you were also talking about depth. Does the lack of ability to absorb some of these injuries, does that fall on you then as the GM for not having the replacements in place?
Yeah, listen, and there's nothing bold. I mean, nothing strong about this. But let's just face it. You're going to have your coordinators for not calling the right plays. You're going to have your players that were out of position or when you don't win. And it's fact. And then the players that are out there, those are the responsible. They're out there because of the decision-making process that we make. And by being both the general manager and the owner, well, ultimately the owner gets the total responsibility because he's the one that says yay or nay. And by the way, that's I don't know why, but that's kind of overlooked. I don't know too many situations where that owner isn't ultimately involved in the key decisions. In our particular case, I'm the GM, and that's always been the way it's going to be. I've seen a little on that lately and would have expected it, not questioning my GM role. But, the Cowboys have had only 2 GMs in the history of the whole franchise. Tex Ram was the GM of the Cowboys all the way through the Landry era. And so I know it can work, and I've seen it work. But more importantly than anything, to answer your question, the buck does have to stop with who is writing the check. That's a fact. It stops right there. And by the way, if that situation, and it can be ownership, that may not be involved in the day-to-day operations of the football team. When I bought this team, it was clearly at that time, they said, well, you're buying this team for your children. And I said, no, I'm 46. I'm buying this team for this children's right here. And having said that, I said, every aspect of this thing, I can't do it any other way. Every aspect of what we do, and certainly coaches, the hiring of coaches, and what you pay them, and the hiring of players, and what you pay them. All of those things are part of ultimately me making a decision ultimately on it. What's missing is all of the input that I get on the way there. And so I do get a lot of input. I listen to it. And by the way, if you're going to change anything, then you change that mirror and you change your approach to it and what you're doing with it, or you change who you take the most emphasis from on your input. And you just don't recognize that as being as credible as it should be because of your lack of success.
I feel like you just answered this question or made reference to it, but we get this question all the time. I really want to put it to bed, hopefully for good. As long as you are here, you will always be the general manager of the Dallas Cowboys, correct?
Well, let me say this. That's about the millionth time I've answered the question.
And we keep getting it. I don't know.
Over the last 35 years, but I get it. It's built up. I'll never forget Loopy Murchison, whose husband was brother of Clint. And Loopy was a friend before I owned the Cowboys. And she was an iconic lady here in town. And right after I got involved, she came up to me and said, Jerry, said, my goodness, you've got to get you a buffer. Said, you will always be being criticized if you don't get a buffer in there and have you somebody that you can say, we need to change this, we need to do that. And I said, well, Lupe, I know you love me, and I know you're trying to take care of me, but I said, that's not what I'm here for. And I'm here to run the team. And I really didn't buy the Cowboys. I made this my occupation.
Jerry, before we let you go, when you see a coach like Bones Fossil shedding a tear for losing Marquise Bell, what are your thoughts when you see something like that going on?
I'm not so sure I understand your question. First of all, I hate it so much for Marquise Bell.
Yeah.
That's the one. Dealing with injury may be the toughest thing that any player has to deal with. That's real stuff, boy. Michael Irvin will tell you that he thought he found out what football meant to him when he was injured and thought he wasn't going to have it back. So I first and foremost feel terrible for the player. Now, that's what they do. That's what they signed up to do, is take those kinds of risk. But from there, there are things in coaching that are easier than others. But one thing every coach, everybody is expected to handle are the adjustments for injury. Now, the practicality comes in that there's no way in the world you're going to replace Dak Prescott. You can't. But we're ready to have Rush there. And people are asking this question about Lance. Well, Rush gives us the best chance to win the game. That is the number one thing of importance, is win the game, not evaluate.
Excellent stuff as always. Appreciate it very much, good sir. We'll catch up with you again next week.
You bet, guys.
There
Bye-bye.
you go.